Hello, and welcome to this companion tutorial series to AK Warder's Grammar Guide, an introduction to Pali. Today we come to lesson 18, and we're going to look at the declension of I stem nouns, the second verbal class of present stem conjugation, comparative adjectives, and finally ordinal numbers. And at the end of this tutorial I'll give you a tip to help translating those long passages that Warder presents in the exercises. This is Pali Studies on the Learn Pali channel. So, Warder now begins to introduce some other of the declension patterns, and we begin with the declension of nouns in I. All noun genders have stems ending with I. But today we're only concerned with the masculine and the neuter. So if we take our example nouns and look at how each of these decline, we can then extract the stems and, with a little rearranging, create a generalized table. And like the A stem nouns, the masculine and neuter only really differ in the nominative and accusative cases. The vocative is always the same as the nominative, but otherwise they're actually very similar, with the characteristic nang, he and su in the plural beginning with either a long or a short e. So that's nouns that end with I. Now, quite separate from I stem nouns, the suffix in can be added to many nouns and most adjectives, in which case they are said to become possessive, meaning to have or possess that quality. So from the A stem noun bala, meaning strength, we add in to get balin, which then means to have strength or to be strong. And from mana, pride, we get marnin, proud. Thus we can turn nouns into adjectives. And most of these terms ending with in usually have their own entry in the dictionary. And being adjectives, they decline in all three genders. It doesn't matter what the gender of the original noun was. The in suffix declines very similar to the I stem nouns we've just seen, though not exactly the same. And I've given you the feminine here as well. If we extract the generalized endings, we'll find the main difference to the masculine and neuter I stem endings we've just seen is in the accusative singular and the masculine nominative and accusative plural. Also, the ini ending of the locative singular is restricted to the masculine. And it's worth noting also that the feminine is a little different, but as Warder hasn't given us the I stem feminine endings yet, we can ignore it for now. And like any adjective in Pali, a possessive adjective can also stand alone as a substantive noun in its own right, in which case it means the one who possesses such a quality. So, pakin literally is to have wings, but more usually means a bird. And this ending is often found with emotional terms. So, verin means to bear hostility, or an enemy. And occasionally with abstract verbal nouns. And these then can be thought of as being similar to present participles. And they are frequently the final members of compounds. Well, let's move on to the second verbal class of present stem conjugation. Verbs of the second class form their present stem by inserting a nasal before the final consonant of the root, and then appending a thematic a vowel. The nasal belongs to the same group as the following consonant to ease pronunciation. And if the final root consonant is a s, then a pure nasal is used. These then inflect like any normal verb, and Warder gives examples of other tenses. Okay. Next we return to adjectives in Pali, specifically comparisons. An adjective, as we've seen, adds a quality to a noun, and we can distinguish between degrees of comparison. A simple adjective is for some reason called a positive. A comparative implies more than, and in English these often end with er, bigger, angrier, smarter, etc. Or the superlative, which implies the best or the most, biggest, angriest, smartest, and these often end with est. In Pali, the most common way to form a comparative adjective is to add the suffix tara to an adjectival stem. And if the adjective ends in a consonant, an a is inserted between the two. So we get sukatara, which is happier. There are other comparative suffixes. Ia and ia, sometimes with a double y, are added to roots, but only a few of these are commonly used. And importantly, these then decline like a-stem nouns, to agree with the substantive that they qualify. The object of comparison, that is, the thing being compared to, the than phrase in English, in Pali this is placed in the ablative case. The minister is happier than the Brahmin. And in Pali the comparative also overlaps with the superlative in sense. So sukatara can mean happier, but also the most happy or the happiest. However, when the adjective has this superlative meaning, the object or group against which the comparison is being made, this then goes in the genitive case rather than the ablative. The Brahmin is the happiest of the ministers or among the ministers. There is also a specific superlative suffix, ita, which is sometimes found. Next, Warder details some ordinal numbers. In English, except for the first few, we form most ordinals by adding th to the cardinal number. The 6 becomes the 6th. However, 1 to 5 have distinct forms. Pali is similar in that the first 6 numbers also have distinct forms, and thereafter they follow a set pattern, but in this section we're just looking at these first 6 numbers, so it's probably worth remembering them just as they are. These then behave like adjectives, qualifying and agreeing with another noun. If we take panch as an example, we can see that it declines like an a-stem noun, especially in the masculine and the neuter. In the feminine, the last vowel is changed to a long a, and this then declines like an a-stem. Or occasionally, as Warder notes, the last vowel is changed to a long I, and then it declines like a I-stem noun, which Warder hasn't actually shown us yet. Well, that was lesson 18, and I think we have to wait until lesson 26 to cover the remaining numbers. Last week I promised to find an alternative set of solutions to Warder's exercises, and I found 2, one by John Kelly and the other on tipitica.net. And of course links to these are down in the description below. Finally, as the passages for translation in Warder's exercises are becoming quite long, if you're struggling with these, obviously you can skip them, but I want to show you quickly the new digital Pali Reader website. But first we have to find the passage in the Tipitaka, which might not be that easy. Fortunately, both the answer keys give references to the passage. But unfortunately they're in the PTS book and page number format, and we want a sutta number. So I have an app on my blog for converting between the two. And if we type in the book, we can scroll down and look for the page number to find that it's DN23. And now we can look this up on the Sutta Central website and go to the Pali and English translation. And if we view this as Pali and English side by side, this in itself is very useful for when we're learning to read Pali. We know from the page number that it's actually a long way into this sutta, so if we search for the first word of the passage, there are actually 7 occurrences of this, but this is the one we're looking for, and it's the second line of this particular passage. So now if we return to the DPR, we can jump to DN23, but it only gives us the first passage of this book. So if we open the book index and then scroll down to find DN23, and here's the chapter title, and so we can find our passage, and here's the second line. I find navigating the Tipitaka quite difficult. There may be easier ways of doing this, but I haven't found one. Now we've found the passage, we can click on the words, and this brings up the dictionary entries, splitting any compounds for us. And if we click on this small c here, we can bring up the inflection paradigms for that word. Well, that may seem a little complicated, but once you've found the passage, hopefully it will help you with your translation. Next week we look at noun stems ending in u, verbal infinitives, and bahu-bihi compounds.